So those are the main challenges that we had to overcome.
Samir, welcome to Rising Giants. It's great to have you on the podcast as we're exploring more about the Thailand startup ecosystem. What would be great to start off with is talking about like your years growing up in Sweden, and then what it took for you to settle full time abroad and move to Southeast Asia. So maybe just give the audience a bit of an understanding of that, and then we can dive into your startup journey.
Sure, sure. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I studied business in Sweden, and I think my first outside of Sweden experience in terms of studies was when I moved to Japan and London, and that's when I discovered kind of like a world outside. There's so much things happening outside of Sweden. So during my school, I was kind of wanting to leave the comfort zone, and that's when Rocket Internet was basically booming and trying to build stuff in Southeast Asia. And yeah, I basically spoke to them, and they gave me an offer to move to Philippines to start what they called it back then was a Amazon clone. So before that, I didn't know where I was gonna go. It was somewhere in Southeast Asia, and I kind of didn't know what we were gonna do. So yeah, we were sent to Manila. That was back in 2012 to start what is now basically Lazada, and that was basically maybe 1 or 2 months after launch of Lazada in Southeast Asia, and that's basically how I ended up in Southeast Asia and kind of saw what was going on here and the growth in e-commerce, online, and everything was happening. It was very exciting. So it was very difficult to go back to Sweden on the comfort zone when so much action is happening here in Asia.
Yeah, that's a really interesting like way to start. And for Rocket Internet, what was it like working with them, and how's their kind of journey unfolded in the region?
So it was like one of my kind of real job. So I didn't have any much benchmark of an office job back then. So it was kind of setting the norm. Like this is how work is, and I kind of liked it. I embraced it. It's definitely stressful, uh, very hectic. A lot of things happening, very messy, which I liked back then. Right. So it was very exciting because things was happening every day, and very smart people you work with, both like peers, managers, and it was, I would say, like kind of very work hard culture, but all in the same, like people around me was similar mindset and similar goals. So it was very easy to integrate and grow with everyone there. So yeah, and also as a first time jobber, I didn't have much work experience, so I learned a lot from all my managers who actually came from very like big companies, the big four or consulting companies. So you learn from really good people, and what they usually say is like 6 months at Rocket is like 2 years in a normal company, and I spent in total 3 years in Rocket. So that's a lot of work experience in a normal company if you translate it.
Yeah. Wow. And maybe just to give the audience a bit of a understanding on that, what are some of the other big projects that Rocket's done in Southeast Asia? I mean,
Mm.
if people don't know, I mean considered one of the best, right? Kind of venture studios, if you could call it that, in the world today.
Yeah. So back then, there was three business models, right? So one was Lazada, the e-commerce. Another one was a company called Zalora. That was basically the fashion. Then there was another one that was doing office supplies. I forgot, Office Fab or something like this. So basically, office supplies, e-commerce, and one was Food Panda.
Hmm.
So everyone was sharing office. Basically, it was one big office. Everyone was sharing it. We were sharing warehouse as well. So it was pretty fun. But then, of course, there was more companies starting after. I think like real estate platform. It was even a taxi like Grab app similar to that. So it was a lot of business models. Of course, some of them failed, some of them succeeded.
Hmm. Yeah, and okay, and then your experience in the Philippines, and then you said you worked with them for 3 years. What other countries were you able to work with them in, and what did you learn in? I think as well in Indonesia and Singapore.
Yeah, so I was in total. I was in Manila, Philippines, Jakarta in Indonesia, and then in Thailand. And that was my last stint. And uh, between that, I had a year in Singapore for another e-commerce. I was trying to discover a life outside of Rocket and Lazada. Um, I decided after a year to go back to Lazada and Rocket because that was more happening and more fun. I had different roles, right? So in Manila, I was in operations and warehouse. In Indonesia, it was also a bit of operation, moving into retail, and in Thailand, it was retail moving into marketplace and vendor management. So I tried a lot of different things, and that is also good because you see what you like. I mean, one thing back then was that you could try different departments. So if you were interested in marketing, you can move into marketing. If you were interested in commercial, you can work there. So uh, they foster this that you can basically move around instead of leaving the company. You can actually try different departments and see what you like. And I think that was a very very cool thing, and even something we apply today in our companies. Like if you're bored at your role after 2 years, you're happy to move to a different department as long as you're willing to try out new things. So I think that was very very exciting, and you can learn a lot of different things. For me, I tried warehouse, and I tried operation, warehouse, and commercial. I liked commercial more, so I liked the marketplace. I liked growing GMV, growing sales, having a team that grows this, negotiate partnership, etc. So I like this more, and that's where I stayed the last years in Thailand before leaving and starting my own company.
Okay, okay, great. And maybe just like paint a picture. I mean, this was the let's say the first innings of Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, and then you were in Thailand in 2014. What was it like, kind of doing startups, being in the tech industry there? Was it really kind of the first innings? And yeah, just maybe just share more on like what that was like being part of that kind of first wave.
It, it was exciting time. I think that time you could finish a investor deck pre-launch, and you can launch tech companies, right? So you get investment without even launching, just a great founding team. um,
Mm.
I think that was a interesting era. It lasted a few years, and then it like realization came, and like this doesn't work. So that was a time where I also resigned and started GoWabi, right? Because it was starting is easy, raising funding is easier, basically. But I mean, at that time, of course, compared to now, and yeah, it was very interesting time. It was You could see a lot of tech companies all around Southeast Asia. There was a lot of capital in the region, which was pretty cool because um, there was a lot of ideas. I think the only thing was lacking was talents. It was not many tech talents yet in the region, especially developers in certain languages, because most of the big companies was having them already. So that was like, it was a lot of ideas, a lot of capitals, but it was kind of difficult to get talents in a certain areas. But yeah, that was exciting. It was tough as well because you were competing on pre-launch founding team all the time, right? So there was not much back then on validation yet. It was first come first serve, like the fastest one that raises money, the better. And I think we saw this a lot in Indonesia, especially in Singapore as well. It was
Gosh,
fun
weren't
to
those the days? Weren't those the days, right? You could
Exactly.
just you could go with the pitch deck. You have phenomenal background, and then you would be able to raise without any trouble. It's yeah, that's yeah. It's interesting to see the ebbs and flows of that over the course of time, especially since then to today too. It's yeah, it's very interesting. So could you talk to us about what was the spark that decided for you to launch GoWabi? Like, what was that opportunity that you had seen at that time, and how did you decide to attack it?
So it started. I mean, GoWabi today versus GoWabi 8 years ago when it started is a bit different. So when we like the first idea came of personal problems. So there's two things that I was struggling with in Southeast Asia, and that was one is finding a hairdresser to be able to cut curly hair. So that was one issue. Second issue is that I like to work out, and I wanted fitness instructors to come to me. So that was basically the business model, right? Today, we don't have fitness instructors, we don't have freelancers. So it shifted so much. So when we launched a lot of barbers to basically be able to find barbers, read reviews, see pricing, a lot of transparency on pricing, and be able to book it, right? So that was a main issue that we were trying to solve for me, basically. Um, then we start getting traction. We did promotions, we start getting tractions, and we start getting a lot of like female customers going to barbers because it was cheap, because the promotion was very very attractive. And then we start getting problems that the barbers wanted to serve men, because like a barber shop, and they know how to cut men hair, right? They know how to do beards and this stuff. And then it was a bit of problem of cutting girls, so it was different techniques. So that was a problem that they raised to us, and basically told us that, okay, we want to serve men. That's what we do. It's easier for us. Can you limit the customers? Like, can you only let men buy on our services? So that created a problem. Like, okay, should we cater to this, or we solve a bigger problem, which is basically expanding and providing more services in other categories. And that's how we eventually expanded. From only barbers, we moved into salons, we moved into spas, moved into clinics, and move into healthcare. So it basically expanded from a small little problem from myself that we saw, okay, it is not a sustainable solution. There is a bigger problem in the market, and that's how we basically expanded, and GoWabi is what it is today, due to the problems and how we had to adapt.
Well, next time I'm in Bangkok, then I definitely will have to use GoWabi to find a barber because I'm very particular about my hair, and I like I'm one of those. I have a like a true uh I have a true I always go back to the same person every time because I know that they know how to cut my hair, and it really is it really is important. So I can imagine that like as you grew your customer base and as you had more and more feedback, and not only as you were going from men into women and focusing on this growth towards salons, like this problem started to evolve, or not problem, but like this use case started to evolve and evolve. So I'm curious when it was the point at which you had realized that you had a product market fit for GoWabi.
I think it was. I think it happened two times, like in two kind of scenarios. One was, of course, when the users, when I meet in the streets or when I meet whatever, are very very happy and thanking us that we created a platform for this. So I think that is a pretty cool thing, that people are very very happy and thanking us. Like, thank you for building GoWabi. It helps me so much. So that's on the user part. But I think the bigger, more interesting part is when our partners, when we can see the partner growing. And an example, like we have a clinic that has one branch, rely on us for sales, and then suddenly want to expand thanks to us and basically consulting with us on where to open the next branch, and relying on us as a as a launch tool. So they open a new branch thanks to our data, and just rely on us of bringing customers. And I've seen this few times already, and like many companies started with one branch, ending up with 4 or 5 branches, just rely on us. I think that is a very interesting solution, and super exciting seeing that what we built helps so many businesses growing. And I think that is what's keeping us, and keeping us growing, and excited every day.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. So, of course, with the good, there comes the challenges. So, what are some of the challenges that you have faced over the course of the years since you started, and how have you been able to tackle them?
So in the beginning, as we were talking about, that time, it was you can raise on a pitch deck. So we came a bit later. That was basically, so there was already a few companies that raised on a pitch deck with kind of similar business model to us. So raising funding was a bit difficult. It was actually very challenging because imagine that in Southeast Asia you had 3 or 4 businesses already similar to us that raised money, that had a very strong founding team, and we came maybe 6 months too late. So of course, raising was difficult because investors wanted to see, they rather wait. So that was one of the challenges. Another challenge back then was to build trust with the partners, and it was very challenging of building trust, especially these companies that lost a lot of money of them. That how can they trust us, and who are we to take the money, and are we sure we're gonna transfer it to them? So funding and trust was pretty tough. And last thing was how to change behavior from our partners. So we launched as a SaaS solution in the beginning, uh, with a POS and calendar in mind, and that was very challenging. Of how can we change the behavior of our partners, of using our solution to grow their business. So in the beginning, it was kind of tough of convincing them on this. The main problem for them was to get sales, get customers. So that's where we were focused on in the beginning, and then eventually we had to move on to we opened up our SaaS solution. So those are the main challenges that we had to overcome. And today, and also we had early on, that was basically finding good talents. I think that is an ongoing challenge that we faced years ago and still today as well. You always compete with big tech companies that offer
Yeah.
amazing, offer nice fancy offices, etc. So that is an ongoing challenge that we keep need to fight.
Gosh. Yeah, I mean that really is the tough thing is because at some point you do have some sort of big tech that comes in and says, "Oh, we offer this solution just because we have some free capital to be able to offer it," even though they have no knowledge of how to actually offer the solution. It's just kind of like we can do it, and
Right.
so it's yeah, I can imagine. So maybe we might have jumped in a little early to it, but just as like a brief background for the audience, could you give a 1 to 2 sentence or a 1 to 2 minute summary of GoWabi and be able to just share with the audience as to what your company what kind of solution your company provides.
Sure. So we provide 2 solutions. One is a B2C. So on the
Mhm.
B2C side, we basically, I mean, our app connects a lot of providers in health, beauty, and wellness.
Mhm.
So everything from clinics to dental to spas to salons, everything in health and wellness. We put them on our platform, and customers can read reviews, and buy deals, book appointments. So that is basically the main solution for our B2C
Okay.
consumers. On our partner side, besides helping them growing sales and provide marketing solution for them, we have a SaaS solution where we offer them a point of sale system, a calendar management system, and a CRM system. So basically everything for you to manage your shop, we help you do that. And these are the two solutions we're providing today.
I feel like that's really nice because one of the things that Max and I have realized, especially in Southeast Asia, is specifically in dental, for example, like there's a lot of when you think about this is from personal experience in the U.S. at least. You go to a dental cleaning, and usually the typical thing is that once you finish with the cleaning, you follow up with a receptionist, and they schedule you immediately for another meeting at some point in the future date. What we found is, especially in somewhere like Cambodia, is that something like this is almost like non-existent. It's just kind of it's just kind of a you go in, you do it when you want to do it. There's no like schedule to it. So it's really nice to know that there's with GoWabi, especially there's a platform that creates some sort of like consistency, not only from a business perspective, of course, but also from just like a health perspective too. When it comes to a like with dental, for example, I mean, whether it's every 6 months, you want to make sure that you have a consistent calendar from the business side that's able to track patients that are creating a relationship with the dental clinic, with the dentist, to be able to say, okay, over the long term, you're going to be able to, make sure that you have good dental hygiene in this example. So that's one of the, at least on our side, especially in Cambodia, that's one of the things that we've realized recently that is kind of like a missing gap, where a solution like this would help with making sure that this kind of progression happens, especially in the healthcare system.
Exactly. So I think it was very manual, right? So that's a problem, right? So example, yes, you need to go every 6 months. It's very manual. So that's where our solution, you can automate it with our CRM solution. Another interesting part here is what you mentioned about your barber. You have a guy that you keep going to because he knows, right? So on our POS system, our providers can actually take a photo of the, like, so example, you have a user profile, and after you're done, the barber can take a photo exactly how it looks like, and it saves into your profile. So next time you go to the barber, they can actually pull out your profile, and maybe that barber is not available, but you have another barber, but there's reference points on your profile with photos, and this can be applied for nails, for lashes, for a lot of other beauty services as well.
Yeah, and I have to tell you the truth. I am, like I was talking about earlier, I'm super particular with my haircut. So I do have a picture. I'm like, yeah, threes on the sides, scissor cut on the top, but I just wanted to look just like this. And
Exactly.
yeah, it's really funny. Like once you have a good cut for the first time, you want to make sure that you're particular about it moving forward. So if you fast forward to today, it's been some years since GoWabi has started, but can you talk to us about the current state of the business, and what is kind of tell us about how has the growth of business been so far? What is it that you're currently focusing on, and it would be great just to get a current status of what GoWabi is like in 2024.
Sure. So I think today, I mean, like, we've been in the market for 8 years. 4 years ago was COVID, so like half of our life has been COVID, and we had like a 50% break there, right? So we grew actually after COVID. We grew a lot in terms of both user acquisition and partners. And we also opened up, like during COVID, we had to expand to something else than health, like than spa, for instance, or salons, and that was the time that we opened up our health category. So everything was closed, and the only demand from the market was COVID test and COVID vaccines, and we didn't have these services in the beginning. So what we did was, okay, we expanded into COVID tests. We partnered with one of the big hospitals here to provide COVID vaccines, and we start growing there. And actually, that was our entry into healthcare. Fast forward to today, we expanded a lot on healthcare. We saw a big demand in health checkups, vaccines, even surgeries. So that kind of opened up that, and we were kind of forced to do that during COVID. So that was kind of good thing that came out of it as well. And we kind of been growing after COVID. We've been kind of been growing, 2x every year. Today we almost 10,000 providers in Thailand. So from small shop of 2 or 3 seats to big chains of 50 branches and big hospitals. So there's a lot of providers, and the new categories that we expand into, like healthcare, dental, even surgeries, has been growing a lot. So that has been very, very exciting, and something we want to keep going. But then when we see what the partners need help with, it's basically how we can go deeper into, how can the partners expand further, right? So we have our SaaS. We are already plugged into thousands of providers, and this is where new opportunities come up, right? So, example, more like a brand, a company want to launch new branches. We have data that no one else have. We have data on the working capitals, on how much they're selling monthly. We can use and leverage this data for something in their benefit, right? If they want to get a short-term working capital loan from anywhere else, or even from us, and we have the data to support it, right? So I think for us is more, how can we go deeper into help our partners to expand? Because of course, when our partners expand, we also grow, right? So it's a win-win there. So we found the winning formula is that combination of a SaaS B2C model, and it works in Thailand. And now the next step is, how can we replicate this winning formula outside of Thailand as well? So these are the two things that we want to keep pushing, and that is also what we're very, very strong at.
And what would you say the addressable market size? You say you're at 10,000 providers in Thailand. Like, how many would you say is that sort of addressable market in the country?
So at least 3-4 times more than that exist in the market.
Mm.
Interesting thing in our industry is that every year a lot of businesses close down and opens up again. So it's kind of heavy in terms of acquisition, because especially the SMEs, they might operate for 1 or 2 years, close down, a new company comes up, operate for 1 2 years, close down. So this happens all the time. Some of them very, very willing to work online, and they see the need of online platform. Some of them not. So this is always a challenge on acquiring new partners. But that is only on the supply base, right? And then how can we leverage more on our SaaS, right? So right now we're offering monthly subscriptions or yearly subscriptions on our SaaS solution. And of course, you will see more plans, right? So right now we offer 2 plans. You will probably see more plans in terms of our SaaS solution, and how we can, example, use data, and have our partners leverage data better, and how we can help that for them, right? So there's so much deeper we can go, even with our 10,000 providers, in terms of packages, plans, and the solutions we offer within our SaaS solution.
Okay. Okay. And you mentioned about, I mean, it sounds like the market in Thailand, like there's so much more to do and grow. But you also mentioned about maybe sort of going beyond Thailand. Where would you say are sort of the comparable markets that you think this kind of solution would be relatively easy to launch into?
I would not say easy.
Yeah.
Definitely a big challenge.
Yeah.
So I think what we compare is similar markets. What I mean by similar is uh, we look at the behavior of users, right? So we know in Thailand, some user behavior is very, very big on certain categories and certain basket sizes, or price points on certain services. So we have done a lot of investigations on which city, I would not say even country, like which city in Southeast Asia that has similar trends in terms of beauty services, healthcare services, similar price ranges, and user behavior. So definitely, it's somewhere in Southeast Asia. We're still investigating what is the best way of launching, because, of course, you have first the similarities in the industry, uh, in both users, like so the B2C users, and also on our B2B part, right? So that's one part, and the second part is also how challenging it is to enter a new market, in terms of legal, in terms of finding talents. That's definitely another aspect we need to take into consideration.
Just one random thought there. Has Phnom Penh ever come across your radar? Would that be somewhere you look at?
We have definitely, we are, and we have also investigated Phnom Penh, definitely. So I mean,
Okay.
I think most of the cities in Southeast Asia we are investigating. We have
Hmm.
done research. Even we flew to some places just to check how things are. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's I mean, of course, it's intensive in both time and money, right? So that's why we haven't
Right.
rushed it yet, because there's still so much to grow in Thailand. But it is always good to keep the doors open there.
Hmm. And when do you plan to do your next fundraise? And maybe just talk to us about like the current investors that you've worked with and what that sort of looks like on the fundraising side.
So we've raised few rounds throughout our years. The last round was around 2 years ago, and right now we're pushing a lot on profitability. So we're in a very very good path to actually make money. And that, if you asked startups and investors pre-COVID, that was not in you know in the business plan. So we are pushing a lot on having a healthy business for us and for our partners. And fundraising will happen once we know where we want to go, and we don't want to be rushed in fundraising, and we don't want to fundraise due to losing money, and going, like, basically lack of money. So that is not the goal of fundraising for us. So the fundraising plan will be more to expand on a healthy business, and I think this is how the market has also shifted. So luckily we're also going into this path, and yeah, that will be the plan.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know we're coming up on time here, but the last section of the podcast, we just have a few questions on the interpersonal side. Um, you mentioned before when we were chatting about making having that work life balance and trying to take a break every now and then. What are some of the habits that you install in yourself to stay self accountable and keep you going on this
Mm.
on this path that's been a long journey so far building what you've built?
So I mean, for me, fitness is a very very big part. That's how I can keep myself sane and release stress. So I go to CrossFit 7 a.m. four times a week, and get it done with, and then go to office with very relaxed mind. So that one I love doing, and if I don't do it on a week, I feel a lot of stress, and it just affects my work. So I think that is very very important, and also this is something we applied in our company as well. That not going to CrossFit, but health and fitness, focus. So we provide benefits for that as well. Other than that, um, I do like learning. I think I kind of reduced my time watching Netflix and scrolling on Instagram, and switched it with YouTube Premium, and basically learning from either books or TED Talks or anything like this. And that is a habit I applied a few years ago, and actually it works out really really good. And that's, yeah, during weekdays I'm not allowed to watch much Netflix, and just keep learning. It might sound boring,
That's
but
good.
after a while, it's actually interesting, because every day you learn something
Right.
new.
Yeah,
And
YouTube has so much more like informational kind of stuff, but it can be quite light. It won't need to be like that intense, but it still keeps you learning.
exactly. So it's also different ways of learning, like different techniques as well. Like there's different ways. depending on who does the video. So it can be fun as well. Some can be boring as well. So I think learning is always good. Even meeting peers, right? Meeting fellow founders, etc., sharing problems. I think that is something that you can really, really, relate to, and that's always good. And also something that we apply in our company is basically like kind of goal setting and try out things, right? So I think in a tech company, how we managed to come where we are today is don't be afraid of testing and failing, right? And I think the most important is just fail and learn and improve it. So this is something that we apply in all teams, and we want the ideas to come from the middle managers or the juniors as well, because I mean you work on it day to day. You should have some ideas on how to improve things, and we respect and actually take into account a lot of ideas that happens from the bottom to going up. And I think a lot of implementation have happened due to that. So I think I also apply it myself. So I think that is overall what we kind of do as well. That
Mm.
works for now. Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, even having been in a junior role position before and kind of going through the ranks, having it's great to have that humility of you like accepting the fact that you don't know everything. It's totally fine, and that is normal. That's like you're consistently learning, even at the top of the organization. Like you are still learning as environment changes, as things shift. It's like you're just making a best judgment call, and then when you make the judgment call, you're just trying to figure out how to you know gear the organization around that judgment call too. So it's like it's a very like across all levels, it's a very humbling experience too. So um, you know to that point of never stop learning, it's very, very key. Specifically for you, has there been any sort of role model or book or podcast that has really stood out to you where you've been inspired or have shared with others to say, this is it right here. Like this is what I'm talking about. Like this is where I'm getting all my knowledge from.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't say a specific book. So I think I would. So there's few books that I love behavioral economics a lot. Like everything in nonfiction behavioral economics. It's that's the only thing I read, kind of. Um, I think so a few things like the book you have behind you, 0 to 1, is pretty good. One thing
the
I
best.
exactly. No, that before starting, so I was reading a lot. Yeah, 0 to 1 and the Lean Startup. And one thing though that I thought that when we started GoWabi was that okay, the things I learned on the Lean Startup, I have already applied it. Looking back, I definitely didn't apply whatever even an MVP. I thought this was an MVP. No, we overdeveloped things that we could have cut 80% of, right? So I think it was helpful, but I thought I used it well, but I didn't actually. And a big author I like a lot. There's two, right? So one is Dan Ariely, is a lot on behavioral economics. Daniel Kahneman, which he doesn't. So also very, very interesting. And then interesting book I'm reading now and actually almost finishing, which is very interesting. It's called Build by Tony Fadell. Very interesting because a lot of things that you go through at work. I mean, even when before starting GoWabi and during the time, you can relate to. I think that is kind of recommended right now. That I kind of like. That is, yeah. Try read it.
Yeah, cool. We'll have to share those. We'll have to share those books in our show notes too, just for everyone to read. And coming up on time now, but what our traditional closing question that we like to ask each of our guests is, what is the greatest piece of advice that you've ever been given?
I think something that we live by also in GoWabi, and it's also part of our DNA. It's so example, right? So you do a project, right? So usually project takes is a long from start to finish, and a lot of people cannot see the progress, and a lot of people want instant gratification. If they don't get this for a long time, you kind of lose motivation. So something that we do is we celebrate small wins, right? So I think that is something that we apply overall in the company. So despite the project is very, very long, we try to break it down, and every part, like say every 10%, 20% progress on it, we celebrate that small win. So I think this is something that I think important as a personal and also at business. So it keeps you pushing, it keeps you motivated, um, and you can celebrate that there is progress. So I think that is something. I'm not sure if it's advice or quote, but it's just like the mindset that we have that works.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true because a lot of times too, I mean, outside of just like with GoAbby, that is, revenue generating, right? Even with Max and I on the podcast side, it's like, we have to always remind ourselves that you're consistently creating content, or you're consistently creating some sort of value to whoever your consumer or customer may be. And
Mhm.
for us, and I'm sure for yourself too, it's always great to just like break that down versus like you have an end goal in mind, but being able to get to that end goal, it doesn't seem like such a vast gap if you can break it down into little wins or little goals that you're able to achieve along the way. And all those small goals eventually build up to what the overall reaching goal is supposed to be. So that's really great advice, especially from a founder side, working in a startup, as well as anybody else that's looking to create anything of value too. So very, very
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, Samir, thank you so much for taking the time with us today on Rising Giants. We had a blast talking with you. It was awesome to learn about your background, to learn about GoWabi, to share those experiences that you've had learning about the business. And we are looking forward to speaking with you in the future and seeing the future success of GoWabi as well.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the
Yeah.
call. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.